Hey guys, today I'm going to do a walkthrough of my 2020 setup of my Hobonichi Cousin. I've got my 2019 here for reference. I just did a video kind of talking about my planning process, and there's not a whole lot of change between last year and what I'm planning on doing for next year, but there are a few things, so I wanted just to have this handy. I definitely chunked this up this year. I add stickers pretty much every day within the weeklies and in the dailies, but honestly, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, so it's held up pretty well. I have taken the cover off of both of these. I usually put these in a protective cover, but just for showing's sake, I found this to be a little bit easier. So I'm gonna quick walk through the Hobonichi in case you've not seen one before. This is an A5 size planner. It is made up of Tombow River paper, which is extremely thin, but very fountain pen friendly. You open up to a year at a glance, last year and next year. You then have a 2-page spread, future log type of layout. You then have all 12 month on 2-page layouts, and then you move into 52 weekly spreads. They are a vertical layout. They are timed. They start at 5 a.m., they end at 4 a.m., and you get even spaces per day. Every Sunday is in red along with holidays, but they are Japanese holidays, so they don't typically coordinate with US holidays if you care about that. You then have the daily pages, and you get a page per day. You can see your month, your date, day of the week, day of the year, and then the lunar cycle. Your dailies have 5 checklists up top, a smaller timed section, a very faint line subdividing, and then they have a quote at the bottom of the page. These are all in Japanese, and they do not sell a translated version in the A5 size, but you can get a translated version in the Techo, the original, which is an A6 size. If you're looking through your daily pages, you'll see that the months are kind of color blocked, so you can flip 2 months a little bit faster, and the entire month is that color. So the grid space, your dates, your text, everything is that month's color, and it does switch up every month. I think that's kind of my only thing I don't absolutely love about this planner is some of these colors are just not colors that I would have chosen for myself. But some of them are like my absolute favorites. Like I love November, I love August, I love July, but the first half of the year is just not as much of a winner for me. So this is sort of my all-in-one planner. It is my diary, my bullet journal, my planner, and all my to-do lists and things like that. But something I absolutely have fallen in love with over the past year, and looking at 2020, I will probably supplement with a bullet journal just like I did this year, maybe another planner for work, but I couldn't imagine leaving this behind now. So opening up my 2020 planner, the first thing you see is the word space. Space is my word of the year. I've never done a proper word of the year, and I'm looking forward into leaning into this. This was lettered by Planning with Quinn on Instagram. I will link her Instagram down below. She was just doing it as a freebie sometime in November, and I printed it on vellum and washi taped that into my planner. I wanted it front and center so I didn't forget about it. Right now, I don't currently have a plan for my month at a year at a glance. I was going to do like my cycle tracking in here, but I've just decided that I would prefer to have all my trackers together. I think if Virgo and Paper restocks their yearly overview kit, she makes one specifically for the A5 Cousin, I might pick that up because she's got a nice big sticker that goes over last year, which I typically am not going to reference, and I might put my yearly goals in there. I'm still sort of solidifying what that means to me and how I want to word those, but I will put them somewhere near the front of my planner. This section, I'm not doing a whole lot of change for 2020 except for a couple things. If you have not seen my previous video, I use the future log as a calendex. So I bullet journal back here on the daily pages along with regular journaling every day. And then I will go ahead and index it here on this spread. So if you were to flip to January 1st daily page, I have a spread on grid spacing on the 2nd I have my work hours. On the 12th, I have a $20 plus wish list. So these are things I've already set up ahead of time, even though we haven't started the new year. So flipping to the daily pages, you can see that I will typically do some sort of collection on the left-hand side of the page and then journaling on the right-hand side of the page. I contemplated doing this a few different ways in 2020, but ultimately I just decided I liked aesthetically how things looked, and I liked the opportunity to journal every day and have plenty of room for lists, collections, trackers, and ideas. So I've pretty much set up my trackers, and I'll talk through those a little bit more again, but just so you've got an idea, I've got these collections and these are what I'm indexing over here. Once I index it, I use a zebra mild liner just to further categorize them. So this color I use for lists, and I consider a wish list to be a list, my Sephora list to be a list, and my Amazon points list. These are things that I refer to monthly and I go back to often, but I'm also actively checking items off of it. It's not just something that I use for reference. So reference, I chose the color purple. The first collection I did was grid spacing. I'm going to look at that often. I'm going to refer to it often, but I'm not like actively tracking anything on it or checking things off. So that's a reference spread. You don't have to do this color coding thing, and I think everyone would probably come up with a different set of rules if they did. But what I love about this is if I know I'm looking for something that I consider to be a running list, I can very quickly sift through by color and find the page that I want. The reason I do this sort of like cal indexing system is the Tombow River paper is really thin. And if I go back here, I can very easily grab more than just a couple pages at a time without realizing it. So knowing the specific day I'm looking for is essentially the same as your specific page number, and it makes finding things so much easier within this system. Something I'm doing different than I did last year for next year. Last year, I really underutilized this section, and I want to basically record some monthly favorites up here. I'm thinking favorite song of the month, favorite book of the month, what TV shows that I'm into, maybe particular makeup products that I liked, things like that. And I want to just have like a quick at a glance overview of some of those things that I don't typically think to write down anywhere else, but are a good representation of my year memory-wise. And at the bottom, I'm going to do essentially my highlight of a month. I have a Polaroid zip printer, and if you print landscape and trim them in half, they fit pretty well into these daily pages. So at the end of the month, I'm going to choose a photo that I feel represents that month the best, print it out, and then put that on here. I'm trying to do a photo a day for 2020. We'll see how successful that is, but I'm really trying to become a picture person because I would love to do like, not necessarily a scrapbook, but definitely a photo album at the end of the year. I have also kind of created my reference key just on vellum. I use the mild liners for my color code, and then I just wrote what they were using a Tombow Fudenosuke Brush Pen, and I've just washi that in here because these colors are different than the colors that I used last year. Once I get used to them, I'll peel this off and put it on a daily page, index it, so in case I do forget, I can find it again. But I wanted to utilize the space, so I just washied it on some vellum so I wouldn't actually be writing it on the page. Another thing that I'm doing different this year is I did a ton of journaling in my 2019 Hobonichi on the daily pages. I did more journaling than collecting, I think, and basically what I found is that when it came to the journaling, sometimes I wanted to go back and find that specific thing that I had wrote about, particularly around creative writing. I've got a color here for fan fiction. If I've got an idea going around in my head, I will write that out pretty quickly instead of writing about my day or about, you know, something that I want to do in the future. I have no rules around my journaling, but I wanted to be able to go back and find them. I also do a fair amount of I call it vision journaling, but it's sort of like affirmations, writing about things as if you've already achieved them. And I found I occasionally did some venting as well, like about work or something like that. And I kind of want to use this as a quicker way to find some of those creative writing pieces in case I do want to pull from them and flush it out and put it online, or just sort of to see like how often am I venting in my planner? Is that a healthy habit for me? Am I something that I need to continue, or maybe there's some trends within that venting and I need to kind of focus on that specific area. Next we have the monthly spreads, and last year I pretty much used these to just post plan and plan my monthly highlights. So I would do a character sticker per day and then just sort of write one great thing about that day. I love this practice. I think I'm going to continue it, but I wanted to put a little bit more emphasis into pre-planning within this as well. I do the majority of my pre-planning in my bullet journal, but I want to make my Hobonichi Cousin as functional and as much of a one-stop shop as possible. So I've already sort of committed to pre-planning. I'm using a circle as sort of my events that I know I have, and I wrote birthdays up here. I kind of refer to it as the date bar. I don't really know what else to call it other than that, but going ahead and doing that. I will go back and do my like highlight of the day and like write around my events as my highlight. I don't want to lose that aspect of this planner because that's something I really enjoy, but I want to get more out of these pages. I'm also going to try and track the same 9 things this year every month within this sidebar. And for me, that is, did I get in my 30 minutes of movement? Did I do AM skincare, make the bed, fill out my 5-year journal, read, evening skincare? Did I track my calories in versus my calories out? Did I vacuum? And did I spend money on planner supplies specifically? I've also added sort of like a running task list. This is again something that typically lives within the monthly spreads of my bullet journal, but I wanted to sort of have reference to this, have this in front of me, and make this a little bit more functional by having some of those like top priority items in here. So December is sort of like a bonus month for the 2020 planner. So I actually will kind of duplicate between my 2019 and my 2020 because I can't help but leave the spreads. I don't like blank spreads when it comes to a dated planner, so I will probably double plan that. But I have gone ahead and in effort to force myself to do some pre-planning in this planner, I've gone ahead and put in what is typically in my future log for those like for sure events into my planner already for those monthly spreads. You do get a bonus few months as well. So you get January, February, and March of 2021 in this planner as well, just so you guys know. My weekly spreads really aren't going to change, but I did notice a couple differences. I don't know if anyone's done like a solid comparison of last year versus this year, but one thing I noticed is in the 2019 version, you get 2 extra grids before your 5 a.m. start, and then it ends down here at 4 a.m. In the 2020, you don't have those 2 grids before, they actually are at the end of the day. So you've got like a nice blank space and then immediately 5 a.m. And then down here you have the 2 extra kind of spots that you didn't have before. So I don't know, what drove that, but that is a little bit different. I actually kind of like it because I have struggled to determine, I'll try and like get this so where you can see, but basically I'm always like, is the grid above and below? Like, is the 16 in the middle of the hour or is the 16 at the top of the hour? And the way it's laid out in the 2020, it kind of drives that like 5 a.m. this is the top of the hour, and then you get two rows basically per hour. So every 30 minutes gets a line. I pre-plan in these typically the Friday before the week starts, and then I just sort of like live in them throughout the week. I adjust things, I add new tasks, I move things around, I use character stickers, washi tape, things like that. I don't plan on changing any of my weekly process. Those spreads work out really well for me. So we'll see. I think the only thing next year that I really want to focus on is maybe just doing a little bit simpler spreads. So now there is a spread in between your weekly pages and your daily pages before they start. And it says turning the page to a new year. It is just gridded on both sides. You've got December and a January calendar in the corner. And I think my plan for this is I'm basically going to divide this into 4 quarters. And instead of doing like true New Year's resolutions, I'm just going to do quarterly resolutions, and I'm going to set them before. So January 1, I'm going to sit down, or maybe late December, we'll decide, and I'm going to actually like write down my goals. Instead of setting up like a full year-long goal, that doesn't seem to work for me really well. I'm going to use my word of the year in lieu of a New Year's resolution, which I'll talk about here in a second a little bit more, but I wanted to be able to set some like quarterly goals and have something a little bit more short-term to work towards. So when you turn the page, there's a blank spread before your daily pages for the month. In my 2019 planner, I use them in various ways. I started the year off by essentially writing down if something, like summarizing habit trackers, what worked, what didn't, what are things that I want to try for next year. Towards the end of the year, it started to kind of like become a monthly task list, things like that. So I use these for various different purposes, and I wanted to have a little bit more of a streamlined approach for 2020. So what I'm going to do in here is every month I want to define what my word of the year, which is space, what that means to me. So I want to focus on like certain aspects of my life where maybe I want to create space in my closet by going through and donating clothes. Maybe I want to create space in my daily calendar to have a consistent morning routine. Maybe I want to create some emotional space by letting go of something that isn't serving me or friendships that are hurting me more than helping me, and create space for new friendships and work on being emotionally available in certain situations. So I've done some extensive journaling, sort of thinking through where and how and what I want to create space with in 2020. But instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to do these 20 things every month, I want to just choose a couple of those things and redefine what that word means for me and kind of lean into it. So I'm going to do that bit of journaling, and if there's any specific habit trackers that don't fall under those daily 9 that I showed you in the monthly pages, I will make specific habit trackers for those space elements for this month. Then we move into the daily pages. So I talked about this a little bit. All of these are indexed already, but basically my goal for this year, and I'll flip this up I'm sure a million times, is basically collection on the left-hand side of the page, journaling on the right-hand side of the page. The reason I do that is my collections tend to be a little bit of a narrower list, and there's sort of a faint dividing line. It's probably hard to see on camera, but I can typically get a collection within this smaller section, and that leaves me more room for daily journaling. We're not at the first yet, so I haven't done any journaling, but there were some spreads that I knew I was going to reference. So I've got one for grid spacing because this is a little bit wonky. It's not a perfect square. Sometimes I'll do things, just on the left-hand side, sometimes on the right, sometimes I want to center things. So this is a handy page to have. Then we have my daily trackers. I will tab all of these. These are just like 3M repositionable tabs that I've covered in washi tape, and then I laminate them halfway to about here so you can still like pick them up. The 3M brand repositionable ones work really well with the Tombow River paper. They don't really leave a residue or anything like that. They don't make the page like buckle like washi tape sometimes can, so I really do recommend these. They're some of my favorites for this planner. But this is a full long year tracker. I thought about setting these up 6 months at a time, but I figured these are things I absolutely know I'm going to track in 2020, so I set them up for the full year. So I track my hours that I work each day. The reason I have this versus like in my weekly spreads is I like to see my running totals. I can pay attention to pay periods, and my pay periods actually end on a Friday, so it's a little bit of a different calendar setup than like your typical Monday start. I track my cycle. I'm going to be tracking my calories in versus calories out very loosely. I'm not like an exact numbers person, but I am an engineer, so I am a numbers person. So I do track that. Going to work on a pretty minimal no spend planner year. I think I'm going to do more of like a low buy when it comes to planner stuff and then set a specific monthly budget. But I do want to track like how often I am spending money on planners. Does it come in waves? Do I do like a binge week? Am I making small purchases daily? This is just sort of to like keep it on my mind that I am trying to take a step back from spending and utilize all the adorable planner supplies I already have. Same thing with my workouts. I'm trying really hard to do daily workouts this year. Workout is a very loose term. It's really more like 30 minutes of movement. So it could be a walk, ellipticizing, you know, it could be something intense like a Peloton class or something like that. It's just getting my body moving for 30 minutes a day. Year-long cleaning tracker. Basically, this helps me stay accountable to, you know, I don't go 4 weeks between doing something or another. It just keeps me on track. And it's the added satisfaction of once you finish cleaning the house that I know I get to do a bunch of check boxes. I don't know if anyone else is motivated by that like I am. And this is something I'm very nervous about because honestly, I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up with this, but I want to measure myself weekly. I used to get really hung up on my actual weight, and I do weigh myself quite a bit, but you know, new year, more improvements, worrying about our health. This is something that I wanted to kind of track, was my measurements over my weight. And then I have a running wish list. If it's over $20, I want to write this down and I want to make sure I'm thinking about it for a couple days. I can be a really impulsive shopper, and I think having a specific place to turn to write down some items that are more than 20 bucks so I can think about it before I buy, I think it's going to help me for next year. I have a reading list. I do keep track of what I read in Goodreads, so this is sort of a just because I like to see it written down type of list. And I do a lot of reading of like fan fictions or manga online or webtoons that I don't necessarily track because they're not an actual book within Goodreads, and I wanted a place to start doing that. So I did that. This is my pay period schedule. This hasn't been released by my employer yet, so I just wanted to have space for that for referencing. I reference this when I budget for the beginning of the month, so that's why I have a spread for it. And then I have 2 more running lists. So I really only shop at Sephora when they're doing like their VIB sale or the VIB Rouge sale. So anytime I'm like, oh, I want to try something, or if I need something, I will write it down. So when that sale comes up, I've got a list and I'm not impulsive shopping on like all the cute little gift sets or things like that. It's like I knew this is what I needed or what I wanted to try, things that I've, you know, been doing research online, stuff like that. And then similar concept, at the end of the month, my husband and I use an Amazon credit card, so we get reward points, and this is a specific list of things that I want to use those points to buy. We typically use those points to buy household items like the toilet paper, like anything like that, like little things we need for the house versus like having to spend like our budgeted money for it, if that makes sense. So that's all I have set up for collections. There are a ton of like reference pages in the back as well. I don't typically use these. Last year I actually covered them with some like sticker paper and did some trackers back here, but I didn't find that I use them very often, so I'll kind of do some thinking to see what I want to use there. But that in the nutshell is my 2020 setup, and is very similar to the 2019, but I really found my groove in the Hobonichi in 2019, and I think 2020 is gonna be a little bit different, but I'm just excited. I feel like ready to move in. So if you are excited for 2020 and ready to move into your new planner, let me know down below. If you guys have any questions, obviously let me know. If you want to see how these pages end up looking as the year goes on, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I will have that link below as well. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.